There's a pretty one, Ulysses. There it is.
Hello, BookTube. Sean Breeze Books. Welcome back to my channel. I'm in a new park, a 10-minute walk from my place, and I had done a superficial bit of due diligence, but not enough, because the 10-minute walk was really good for me, and then I got into the park and I had to walk a whole lot longer, and I couldn't see any benches. And then I saw the one I'm sitting on and didn't see any others, so I thought it's here or not at all, because the sun is pretty hot. And so I'm facing the sun. The sun's over there, and so I'm going to be a little squinty, but it is what it is, and it's a little bit of a different kind of prairie grassland backdrop for y'all. And this bench is so high that my feet are not touching the ground when I sit on it. It's ridiculous, too, because I'm not short. Particularly, I'm not tall, but I'm 5'10", I think. 5'10". Anyhow, that's not what I'm here to talk about. I am here to tell you some really lovely personal news. So proud of Kenji this week. Very proud husband. He got a job interview. I think I told you about that. And I don't think I knew this when I did the Friday Reads last week, that he had to bring a food safety course certificate. So he had to take that online course, 20 hours maybe, I don't know, of video training in English, and then pass the test before his interview, which happened yesterday. So he had from Saturday morning, we were at the farm, until yesterday to do that, and he hasn't studied anything for years, but he's a typically diligent Japanese person, and he just immersed himself in it, asked me 3 different English language questions during those 20 hours of study, and he passed the test on his first try. He could have tried many more times, but he got it on the first try, so how fabulous. And so then that cleared the way for him not to have to cancel the interview, but to walk into the interview with the piece of paper that she said he must bring. Not only that, but the interview was yesterday, and he was really nervous, and I did some mock job interviews with him, and his grammar's not great, and there was a couple of times where the grammar made the answer sound really strange, and I was a little worried whether he was going to get through the interview, whether they were going to think his English was good enough. He got the job. They offered him the job before the interview was over. And I won't say too much about it yet, except that it's kind of part-time casual with no end date. So with the potential to grow into full-time. And the 2 female managers that interviewed him loved him. And he loved them. And that means a whole heck of a lot. They were both, I think, Filipino. One certainly was Filipino. And so kind of English as a second language. They were not troubled. They told him, one of them said, "Kenji, your English is great. Don't worry." And he got hired. It's a position in food services at the university. That's all I'll say. And he'll start in September, training to start before then. And even if it's only a few hours a week to start, and grows into something more. It's the first English language interview, his first job interview in Canada. Those 2 kind of overlap considerably, and he nailed it, and he got the job offer during the interview. So, how proud am I of my husband, Kenji? He's doing very well, and he had been very nervous about the interview, so life is beautiful, I have to say. And I talked to a friend I mostly was out of touch with for 20 years, I think, 15, 20 years. And I think now her children are older and we've reconnected. And she told me that in addition to reading and loving, my top read of the year was it last year, the year before, Collected Works by Lydia Sandgren, translated from the Swedish by, I'm sorry, I've forgotten her name. I'll put it on the bottom of the screen. That this friend, who I just simply adore, has had a couple poems published in a literary journal, is going to be taking part in a literary festival somewhere in British Columbia. So we're going to have a video catch-up soon. I hope to get it on my channel someday, but time will tell. I'm going to withhold some of the information about my biblioadventure. I went to a book reading at McNally's. That's all I'll say. I won't say who the author is. It was the debut novel. And if you were to go to the trouble to look up who that was, you can do so. But I'm not going to put a link in the show notes, as I always do, or put the cover up. I didn't like his reading. It was quite an autobiographical novel, and he is in theater, and he read it way too theatrically for me, so I couldn't focus on what he was reading because he was just overly dramatic. And yet, in the middle of it, and he read a little bit too much, he skipped all over and so on, and he read for maybe 30 minutes. But there was one passage where the main character as a boy discovers a certain jazz record that he brings home and plays, and his description of that, finally, I was locked in. That was a wonderful passage about the burst of recognition and joy that comes from discovering jazz for the first time, and it just ricocheting all the way down into his core, and that was incredible. But everything else he read after that I didn't like. And then I got more into what he was saying about the writing process and the creativity process after, but it was kind of a bust for me. I didn't buy the book, and I'll wait to hear what other people think of it. But it was one of the more disappointing book launches I've been to. Enough said about that. The opposite of disappointment is how incredible and exhilarating this conversation with this week's mystery guest turned out. Have a look. And this week's mystery guest is the Croatian writer Masha Kolanovic, here to talk about her novel that has been translated somewhat recently into English, translated from the Croatian by Ena Selimovic, Underground Barbie, which I have in my hot little hands, published in English by Sandorf Passage and available in the English-speaking world. You can certainly get it online, either directly from the publisher or from all the other ways you might buy books online. Masha, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here and hosting me on your channel.
So lovely to chat with you. And you are, I interview a different writer every week, and I think you have the coolest look of them all. You just look very interesting.
Thank you. It's kind of my home look. Thank you.
I should have mentioned you're joining us from Zagreb. In addition to being a writer, you are an academic. Maybe before we start talking about Underground Barbie, tell us a little bit about your academic focus.
So, yes, my writing and my academic focus kind of interlap because I'm also a professor of contemporary Croatian literature. I'm also doing theory of literature and cultural studies in this perspective on Croatian literature, mostly on the historical period of the Cold War and after the breakup of socialism. So what I research basically goes also through my writings, and that is not a coincidence because things I cannot tell in a way which I want to tell in my academic work, I find a way to tell them through my fiction. Sometimes academic discourse is to need to express myself on everything I want to say about, especially since I'm focused on the region, on the certain problems of the region, historical, contemporary. And that's how I find a fiction as a very, very important way to express myself, yes, on certain issues. But also what I research give me more deeper insights when I write fiction. So these two kind of, yes, overlap in my writing. Yeah.
Sometimes when I find out that a professor, an academic, is writing fiction, I'm a little nervous that they might not find a true create a fictional voice. And from everything that I've heard about you, that is not a problem for you. So do you access two different parts of your brain for the academic writing on the one hand and the creative writing on the other?
Yeah, I think what you mentioned before, the question of voice, that is the most important distinction because, yes, those two voices are different. Not maybe, insights, not maybe the things I want to say, but the different voice is something that distincts, yes, these two type of writing. And of course, I need to admit or I need to make a confession that writing fiction is way more pleasurable for me than writing academic stuff. Writing academic stuff, of course, has excitement, is an important part of research and doing research. And also, I'm very passionate about teaching. But at a certain point, it's actually much harder for me because when writing an academic piece, you need to very, very careful about who said something before you, to be very particular about, quoting sources and everything. And with fiction, I just feel more more ongoing, more free, not so masochistic, I will say, that I feel in a way when I do my research. So researching is more, I don't know how to say, more disciplinated way of writing. And writing fiction, of course, you need to be disciplinated in one way, but in another way, it's way much, I feel more freedom when writing fiction.
Let's use that as a segue into to please tell us about Underground Barbie.
Okay, so I can enter the topic from many ways. And since we started about this collision of my academic and my fictional writing, I need to mention that idea actually came when I was a student. We need to write a paper in a cultural studies program, and we need to choose one particular phenomenon of popular culture and write a paper about it. It was my last year of graduate school. And actually, I was a huge Barbie fan when I was a kid, and it was during the late socialist period and then beginning of war. And when speaking about Barbie in this context, one needs to know that Barbie was not available as it was in other Western countries, especially United States. We were getting it through relatives who were, working and living abroad. And it was a kind of precious piece of toy or like item of popular culture. So Barbie has a special place for me in my personal biography. And of course, it was very important part when growing up in this particular time of war. So when I first wrote this paper about Barbie as a popular cultural icon, I was surprised how many studies, actually academic studies, there are about Barbie. First, I thought maybe I will write an academic book about Barbie. Then my memories started to kind of disrupt this academic voice, and I found it much more interesting writing about my personal memories and just writing more and more about it. And I was like published small pieces of the book in certain magazines, and people reacted very well on those first draft of the book. And then I said, okay, this is it. So book is actually about childhood in Zagreb during war period in the early 90s, where kids are playing with Barbie dolls in the basement during, air alerts and war. And of course, they have their own little kids' world, but in that war and war propaganda, and most of all, a language of war penetrates in their kids' play, and just nothing is innocent in that moment. Play has its own scripts of Barbie intrigues, who Barbie is in love with whom can. Something which is typical in each Barbie play, I will say, and I will say most of the readers who play with Barbie anywhere can identify with this specific play with the dolls. But this context which I write about is something that is, I will say, specific about and was specific about my play of Barbie and this context. So I'm basically mixing these two layers of very cruel world of war, dissolution of Yugoslavia, and building the language of the a new recent country, independent country of Croatia, and through this play of Barbie dolls. So that is in short, but we can speak about some other layers of the book.
Absolutely. Are there some central characters, and are those central characters children?
Of course, central characters are children. They were depicted in this book most as a crew. The narrator is in a first person narrative, so she's, of course, dominating the narration, and she has a best friend, Svetlana. But the characters of the Barbie dolls are also very, very important because each kid has its own doll and gives to this doll its own character. And what is important, since researching this idea of popular culture and Mattel and Barbie world, by researching this topic, I was very excited and curious about this idea. Like, for example, John Fiske was claiming that popular culture is not only something which is imposed by the producer, but, the consumers or the people also have their own way of making meaning in popular culture. And that is something which intrigued me the most while building the characters of Barbie dolls. So actually, one of the main characters of this book is actually fake Ken, who is kind of received as disgusting in this world of, original Mattel dolls, but he's kind of this uncanny figure. He's disturbing this ideal world. And through him, I'm kind of speaking, he's giving the voice of all these ugly things in the surrounding world. And he's subverting this ideal consumeristic image of everything is perfect, everything is pink world. So
There are a lot of illustrations. This is just one sample. So are you the artist?
okay, so I'm the author of those illustrations,
Oh, great.
which are imitating childlike drawings. Actually, I like to draw, but it's something which I do as amateur, and it's something. All my actually books of fiction are illustrated and have this iconic momentum, which I did by myself. It became part of my artist signature, but for me, it served as a most pleasurable reward after I finished the text. I just kind of wanted to play it more also with the images. And I also find very interesting this relationship between text and images. I think that certain meaning can unexpectedly arise between these two collision. Illustration can highlight certain part of the text and give them just push them maybe in another way which was not obvious by just reading the text. And if I was asked, I will make everything illustrated, each text, because I think the interplay between words and image is such exciting and creative playground.
Well, then let's talk about this fabulous cover. What do you want to tell us about the cover? That is
Okay.
definitely your illustration on the hand, but what a cover.
Oh, yeah. So this cover, we were the editor, Buzz Paul, the editor of the book in Sound of Passage, and my translator, Anna Selimovic, who did really amazing job with translating this book, which was not easy, I must mention, because it was not just translation of the text, it was this huge challenge of translating all this big cultural layer, which I it's totally understandable that most of the readers outside the region are not very familiar with all the details of the political context and specific cultural moments of the books. But just to go back to the front page, we were brainstorming together, publisher had certain suggestions, and we just add layer to layer. First it was this hand, then we added this kind of a tattoo, which is part of my illustrations. And since it's a book about war, we were brainstorming what could be good on pointing on that layer of the book. So we chose these plastic soldiers attacking this hand, which is trying to creatively survive, yes, in this world.
Maybe my last question about the novel is tell us about the refugee ball.
Okay, so yes, when I was a kid, refugees from the inner part of Croatia, which was hit by war more than it was in Zagreb, because Zagreb was more preserved. It was not on the direct front. So this story also enables me to write more loose about certain things in war. And it was the momentum, really. It was part of the back then reality, with the refugees coming mostly to Zagreb and mixing with the kids in Zagreb. And this question of acceptance is something which is problematized in this book through also game, making a ball which is supposed to be a ball with Barbies, but the refugees are bringing other toys. And unfortunately, this question of refugees, since we are living in the world where war is almost always contemporary thing, like it is now in Palestine and in Ukraine and in Sudan. So unfortunately, this particular context of the book is something which is unfortunately actual today in many parts of the world. Yeah.
As far as I'm aware, Underground Barbie is the only work of yours that's been translated into English. Is that correct? And then when can we hopefully expect other translations to come out?
Oh, yes, this is my English debut, and I'm very happy that is this particular book, since it's kind of a Since I'm in my academic work, I'm also very interested in what United States of America meant, for example, to Yugoslavian Croatian culture. I just recently published an academic book about it, and this is something which I kind of return now back to United States. So what this US popular culture meant to Yugoslavia and Croatia is now being, yes, brought back to America to see, yes, how childhood in that region perceived this icon. I also have other books, and just my last published book of fiction, which is short story collection under the title Dear Pests and Other Creepy Stories. It is actually, yes, being pitched by two translators of the book. One of them is Anna Selimovic and another is Vladislav Beronja, who translated the book and are now in search of the publisher. And yes, who knows? We'll see. Maybe there will be some other titles in English translation.
I hope some of those publishers are watching this chat. Get a hold of it. What are you working on now, Masha?
Okay, now you catch me just by the end of the semester when I'm mostly grading student papers. And yes, so I'm just looking forward to wrap the semester and to have more to open this crack of time, which allows me more to do with my fiction. Writing is something which I consider a whole time process. Even though if I'm, for example, not writing at the moment something concretely, I'm always like making notes. I'm always, cooking something. And when the temperature is high enough, things boiled, and then I'm into something. So right now I'm just really into beginning of something, and when I at the beginning of something I have a harsh time speaking about what it is, but I would just say that I'm cooking something. Yes.
Wonderful,
Yes.
wonderful.
Yes. When I write something, I always have this kind of, experiment of writing a little piece of it in the magazine. And that's a sign, that's my probe. That is my, experience. If audience reacts good, well, that is a good sign for me to go on with this project. Yeah.
I believe you have some books to recommend.
Of course, also when you are researching and teaching literature, there are like so many books which are interesting in so many ways. But for English speaking audience, just to kind of lean on the topic we were speaking about, Underground Barbie, and also to mention the writer I was most influenced by while writing this book is one of the most prominent post-Yugoslav writer. It's Dubravka Ugrešić, whose writings are almost, I think, most of her books are published in English and translated into English. And I will, for example, recommend her novel Ministry of Pain, or her novel Fox, or her brilliant books of essays such as American Fictionary, Culture of Lies, because I admire Dubravka Ugrešić's authenticity, her moral and artistic integrity, and her aesthetic lucidity. And she's really aesthetically most highly appreciated writers from the region. She's unfortunately not among us any longer. She died 2 years ago, but I think the value of her work will be just more and more appreciated. In the early 90s, she was a dissident. She was criticizing rising nationalism in the region. That's why she was not based in the country anymore. But her works of fiction and her books of essays, I will say, offers really amazing insight also of what was happening in the region back then. And I think it's important also to read literature, not only historical books or books of nonfiction, but also fiction about that period, because fiction offers something else. It offers a more intense approach of things, and it also offers very particular perspective, which also offers empathy and one particular way of seeing things in the regions, especially in that period. But she's also writing about many more things, especially in her essays about, for example, the role of the writer in contemporary capitalist time, She's giving also very lucid and vivid diagnosis of the cultural and literary field in late capitalism. Altogether, really amazing author. For those of you who maybe are not familiar with her work, I would recommend it as one of the best authors from the region where postmodernism meets post-socialism in a most brilliant way.
That was a
Yeah.
powerful recommendation. I'm
Okay.
aware of her writing, but
Okay.
you have made it much more vividly appealing.
Also, to kind of stay coherent in this topic, the book which I find very, very interesting in later days was the novel In the Distance from Hernan Diaz.
Oh,
Yes, I think it's the novel which hopefully many of the listeners of the channel have read of. If they haven't, they should. It's also amazing book which is even hard to describe because the effect of this text is amazing, showing this big narrative about United States in the 19th century and the first pioneers, also through the lens of this character of Swedish emigrant who is coming and surviving in this epic nature of the United States. And it's showing at the same time cruelty and tenderness of the nature, horror and hope, adventure and meditation. And it's all situated, yes, in the nature. I was not aware how magnificent is articulated this view of this monumental nature and, yes, one human individual in it. And also in the sense of the genre, it's mixing historical fiction and Western genre, and also giving to the Western genre another, I will say, existentialism. Yes, yes. So that will be my two recommendations.
well,
Reading.
I heartily second that. I read it In the
Yeah.
Distance a couple years ago, and you've described it brilliantly, and what an unforgettable character. It's a big
Yes.
novel about a very big man, and I loved the
Yes.
way that it opened with him in the
Yes.
ice flows or something, skinny dipping in the hole in the ice, and then we circle back to that at the end. Oh, it's an unforgettable novel. So that's a great
Yes.
recommendation
Yes.
as well.
Yes.
Have you
Yes.
read his latest one, Trust?
Yes. Yes, I did.
I haven't gotten to it
Yes.
yet.
That is also amazing book. Actually, I read Trust before In the
Uh-huh.
Distance. Since capitalism and banking is something, I also did the research on this relationship between economy and literature. So I got recommendation from these books since this is something which I'm interested. And it's a great book. It's a great plot. It's great how we are also surprised, by the end, by pulling all those branches of narration together. But I was just more struck by In the Distance. It just kind of hit me more as a reader. I just couldn't stop reading the book. Yes.
Well, I am really looking forward to reading your book, Underground Barbie, and I have deeply enjoyed chatting with you about it. I hope you'll come back someday, Masha.
Oh, yes, hopefully. And thank you for hosting me. Yeah.
Oh, what an incredible conversation. Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
yeah. Thank you very much.
Yes, wasn't Masha incredible? And I am looking forward to getting to Underground Barbie, translated by Ina Selemovic, I believe is the pronunciation. Well, that was an incredible conversation. Some Patreon news. Not that any of you have joined it in a hot minute, but that's okay. It's there for anybody who'd like to support me in that way. And we are currently voting on the next two Patreon book club reads, 2 short novels, and there's a list of about 10 of them. And the books that get the top 2 number of votes, however you say that, will be the ones we read, I think, at the end of October and the end of November. I think that's the timeline. And there's, I think, another week to go on the poll. So if you join soon enough, you can vote on those books and take part in those 2 book club discussions. And there's also a bookish brunch this Saturday, which is actually tomorrow. So all kinds of incentive for you to jump in. And then, of course, I got my bookmarks. I'll just flash them here. You can look in the show notes for more information about that. That's my little advertisement for this video. So in terms of reading, I guess because of all of the stuff going on with Kenji, I was happy to focus on him and getting him as prepared as I could, or helping him as much as I could. So I haven't got a lot of reading stuff to tell you about. Mostly what I have is to tell you about 3 new books I'm starting. But I have one bail to tell you about. I'll start with that. And then one book that I'm ready to check in about. But in a very preliminary way. So the bail is this Scottish novel, Disaffection by James Kelman. This was a buddy read with Joe Smith, and what we kept saying to each other, and what I said when I did my preliminary check-in on this, was that we were engaged, not loving it, but quite interested in it. And that continued, and I got just past the halfway point, and that continued until last week when it all stopped, where it was feeling really samey, and I thought it's going to go one of two directions. It's either going to continue along the same line, and I'll explain more what I mean in a minute, or it's going to get darker, neither of which interested me, because I was already bored with it. And it just was like a switch flipped. It's, okay, I've had enough of this. So the protagonist is a late 20s teacher, high school teacher, and he's very, what's the word? Disaffected. He's very alienated from everybody around him. Sexually, heterosexually, he's like an incel, but without the misogyny. I didn't feel that he was misogynist, but he was starved for sex and a relationship, a romantic sexual relationship, alienated from his nuclear family. He's not married, his parents and his brother, and alienated from most of his co-workers, and especially his headmaster. And as I told you, I think on the opening page, he finds a pair of plumbing pipes leaning up against the bar where he's drinking when he goes outside to take a leak, and he takes them home, and they become, I don't know if talisman is the right word, but he pours all of his hopes into that. However he's going to break out of this disaffection, it has something to do with those pipes. Can they be played to make music? He's not a musician, but he's interested in that, and there's all kinds of philosophical stuff that goes with it, and he is spinning his wheels, his inner monologue, and like I say, it was quite engaging until it wasn't, and so I thought, I don't want to finish. And in terms of it getting darker, what's that movie with that? Have you seen that movie with Sean Penn? I think it's called The Assassination of Richard Nixon. I'll put the cover GIF, the movie poster up. I hated that movie because it was that storyline, and I'm just not interested. And I thought it's either going to be more of this kind of spinning his wheels philosophically and just neurotically, however interestingly it's written, and it is very well written, or he's going to end up like that asshole that Sean Penn played and kill somebody or do something violent. And I don't care about those kind of stories. It's not just that they mean nothing to me, but I feel like they disturb me for no reason. There's nothing about it that is important for me. So fuck that shit. This is done, and all I'll say about Joe's reaction is that she was not the slightest bit upset that I bailed. So that happened. Getting my bailing mojo back in the second half of the year, perhaps. And I'm only 2 short chapters into The Coast Road by Alan Murrin, and I have nothing but good things to say about it, but it's really early. I'm doing it as an audio text compo. The audio narration is wonderful, and the writing is gorgeous, and I think that's all I'm going to say. It's about an unconventional woman in 1990s small village, coastal Ireland, Colette. She is, I think she's separated or maybe divorced from her husband, and I think there's some extramarital affairs that had caused all that. The details are not clear, and that's fine, but it's just lusciously written. So that's my very short preliminary check-in on The Coast Road. This will be for a pseudo-buddy read with Alina late this month or early August. So what I have to tell you about the most is the 3 books I'll be starting, even though I didn't finish any. I want to take part in Roz's book club thingy. It's Reading the Globe Fiction 2025, and it's hosted, or if that's the right word, it's put on, organized by Roz of Scally-Daddling About the Books and Katja of Page Turners with Katja. And I didn't hear about it because I've been so far removed from watching any booktube for so long, but I'm starting to at least episodically get back into it. And so I've belatedly discovered this, and that Roz is a member of my Patreon book club, and she never misses a book club discussion. And what an interesting list of books. The one next month, I won't mention the title or whatever, just to not take more time, but is a 800-page novel, so I can't do that one. But this month is one that I very much wanted to read, and it is from Côte d'Ivoire. Is that how you say that? The Ivory Coast, we say in English, but we should all be saying it the French way, Côte d'Ivoire. The writer, who goes by the name of Gauz, with an apostrophe at the end, and it's called Standing Heavy, and it's translated from the French by Frank Wynne. Back a million years ago, when I featured David Hebblethwaite of the great blog, I hope it's still going, called David's Book World on Bite-Sized Book Chats. And he talked at length about it. I'll put a link to that in the show notes, as well as to his full review on his blog. And that's how it first came on my radar. And it's really short, and I could get my hands on a copy pretty quick. So I will be reading along with the rest of yous that are part of Katja and Roz's Reading the Globe Fiction 2025 read-along. I guess it's a read-along. That's what the word is. So I'm excited to get started on that. And so I think Jo bailed, but she felt the same as me. Whether she's going to finish it or not, I don't know. The Scottish novel. But I did say I bailed on the last 2 buddy reads I was doing with you, because the other one was that, what was it? Praiseworthy. I said, I bailed on the last 2 buddy reads with you, so if you're not going to just ban me from your buddy read list, and you have space, we could do one of those short novellas, and so we are going to do one. This is an Indian novel. I would say it's almost novella length, short novel length. A Strange and Sublime Address by Amit Chaudhuri. And then I don't know what meaning it is. If it's like, where do you live? That would be address. But if it's a speech, it would be address. And I wonder why that is. Or am I wrong about that pronunciation? Maybe the speech is also address and the verb is address. I think that's probably right. Editing Sean here. Well, I've looked it up, and according to the Cambridge English Dictionary, it isn't the meaning of the word that changes the pronunciation. British English pronounces the verb and the noun form the same way, address. American English, and Canadian English conforms to the American in this case, pronounces the noun address and the verb address. So that's the difference. I'm not going to remember any of this, but maybe you will. Anyway, so I'm going to go with A Strange and Sublime Address by Amit Chaudhuri, and this is out from NYRB Classics. They brought out 3 books, and this is the first of them. Then Freedom Song, which is longer, and Afternoon Rag, R-A-A-G, I don't know if it's pronounced rag, is the third one. I don't think it's a series, I don't really know, but if Jo and I like the first one, we're going to keep going in the fullness of time. Amit Chaudhuri, novelist, essayist, poet, musician. At the time these were published, professor at Ashoka University, as well as the editor of Literary Activism, all one word, literaryactivism.com. Made several recordings of Indian classical and experimental music. It sounds even more interesting than it did 2 minutes ago. So, going to start that. The third and final one, I'm so excited. My buddy read with Heidi of My Reading Life. That's going to start over the weekend. I'm checking in first on Monday, so I better get at it. Is Sharon Butala's forthcoming memoir, coming out September 9th, or September anyway. How to Breathe Water. We have the advanced electronic ARC, and we're going to start buddy reading it, and I'm so excited. And I will be interviewing Sharon about it in time to post that interview on her pub date. So, lots of exciting things going on. I didn't have much time to read this week, but I think I'm going to try to make up for that the next week. And that's what I know for sure. If you know anything for sure, please tell me all about it in the show notes in the comment section below. Thanks for watching.